Texas's SEC opportunity. So, as I was saying, I don't know at the beginning, I don't know if there's ever been a team in the expansions of SEC's history who looks more ready to come into the league, especially in this new era where everything is a lot harder. But I just dropped my pen, but Texas, this might be an overstatement, I don't know, but they have the potential to take Alabama's chair at the big boy table. I'm not saying DeBoer's not going to work out. I'm not saying we don't know. We can't know anything about that. But right now, what we know about Texas is they have a chance. It looks like there's an opening at that table, and Georgia's the only one really at that table right now, at the big boy table. Texas has a chance to sit there and establish themselves as a power at the top, sliding right in, which would make Texas A&M fans just lose their absolute minds. But it's going to be hard going into 2024, losing the wide receivers that you lost. You had Worthy and Mitchell, but there's so much that you've added in this wide receiver room where I wouldn't be worried. You're going to be fine once I go into this. I mean, you even lost T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murray on defense, but the problem is, or not the problem, your defense will be better against the run in 2024, I believe, especially with the linebacker room up front. You're going to have returning sack leader Ethan Burke, along with Trey Moore from UTSA, who's a dog, and Anthony Hill Jr. The rush defense, like I said, will be up there. The physicality and production that this defense and the experience is going to have in 2024 is going to be up there and going to be able to handle the physicality, the grind in the SEC week in, week out, no problem. But for the receivers, like I said, you have the number 4 recruiting class coming in for this year. And then you have Ryan Wingo, who's one of those key players who could easily step up at wide receiver. Ryan Wingo is a stud. And then you have the transfer portal additions, wide receivers, Isaiah Bond from Alabama, Silas Bolden from Oregon State, who is very good. Really not talked about nationally enough. This kid's really good. And then you have Matthew Golden from Houston, but you had Bond at Alabama, who transfers in for Texas, who was he was second in yards on the team. He would have been first in yards if Texas A&M didn't let Jermaine Burton look like prime Randy Moss and make zero adjustments to him the entire game, but it was also still a Jimbo Fisher-led team, so we're not surprised. But he also, for me, painful. He had the game-winning touchdown catch on the 4th and 31 in the Iron Bowl. I watched that live. That sucked. But incredible player. He led Alabama in receptions. Great get. Going to be just plug-and-play guy for them. Then you also have Silas, who is just a playmaker at Oregon State. He led the team in receptions, yards, and he was second in receiving touchdowns. 54 receptions, 746 yards, 5 receiving touchdowns. He even had 2 rushing touchdowns. So they had a few plays for him where he ran 9 carries for 84 yards. Punt return for a touchdown. This is the funny thing is, I guess this is why he's kind of overlooked, even though he did a lot for Oregon State. He's 5'8", 157, but he's basically the embodiment of you can't measure size, or you can't measure heart, but you can measure size, whatever that is. But he was back-to-back second team All Pac-12. That kid is going to be a playmaker for Texas. You do not want him to get into open space. He can even run routes. His footwork is fantastic. He can run with the rest of them. He's so fast, and he can be a possession receiver at the same time. So really, he's just a jack of all trades. He's like a Swiss Army knife wide receiver, just a little Swiss Army knife. And then you have Matthew Golden, the guy from Houston. He's basically the last 2 years at Houston has been almost the same receiver outside of his yards. 38 receptions this year for 404 yards and 6 touchdowns. In 2022, he had 38 receptions for 584 yards and 7 touchdowns. You basically know what you're going to get with Golden. He's very consistent. He's got good size, and he had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns as well this year, so he's got some speed on him. And he was second team All Big 12. So you have a ton of veteran experience coming into the wide receiver room at Texas, who just lost a lot out of the wide receiver room. But this could be a better wide receiver room strictly with production outside of talent, which, I mean, obviously they had both last year, Worthy and Mitchell and everybody. But this just seems like a room where it's not dependent on 1 or 2 guys necessarily. You can spread the ball out to everyone for Quinn Ewers. And then also we're going to move to the defensive side of the ball, because this is one of the players that I was just fingers crossed when he entered the portal. He went to my school. But Trey Moore, just the absolute beast linebacker at a UTSA. Literally everybody wanted him. Texas basically beat out Alabama and Ohio State to get him. He was the AAC Defensive Player of the Year, first team All ACC. Not ACC, AAC. Last season, he had 45 tackles, 30 were solo, 17 and a half tackles for loss, 14 sacks, a forced fumble, and an interception. And he wasn't just a flash in the pan either. I mean, the year before in 2022, he had 56 tackles, 28 solos, 8 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. He's a highly, highly effective run defender. He wins at the point of attack coming off the edge. He's going to be elite, especially with what you lost this year. That linebacker core for Texas is going to be nasty. So, of any team, like I said, to come in through the SEC, Texas, like seriously, obviously college football playoff contender, but then go to Atlanta year one and they can win the SEC coming in this year. And like you can say the Big 12 is soft with the line of scrimmage. It's different, but Sark has been prepping this team. He's been building them. He's been recruiting. He's been portaling. He's been able to develop as good as anyone, and he runs an insane offense. So this team is not, I don't think they're going to have that road bump coming in. And the only team really in terms ahead of them in line of scrimmage and physicality and all of that, just like basically probably anybody else in the country, is the Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart. But you have Quinn Ewers going to year 3. This is basically a recipe for success. Like I said, you have the big boy table basically opening. And then, I mean, you look at the schedule, and I mean, the away games are tough, but it's still manageable, especially in the 12-team playoff era. So you start with Colorado State at Michigan. That's going to be an awesome game. Like I talked about earlier, UTSA, ULM, Mississippi State, or not home against Oklahoma. You have Oklahoma and then Georgia back-to-back, which sucks. But you get Georgia at home. And then you go to Vandy. You get Florida at home. You go to Arkansas, which will be Arkansas Super Bowl on their schedule next year. But by that time, Sam Pittman may be fired and it could just all be burning down. Or Bobby Petrino will be lighting it back up for the Razorbacks, getting that audition, maybe a Sherrone Moore-like ending for the Razorback season next year there, but probably not. And then you have Kentucky and then at Texas A&M. Obviously, the rivalry is so back, but it's doable. And then I just want to add on to this too. I just think this is the perfect time in this era of college football and for this all to be merging. This was the perfect time for this transition. It was announced a few years ago. Everyone was like, ooh, this will be tough, for the Big 12 teams coming in. I don't think it's going to be tough for Texas at all. I think Texas is just going to slot in there right under Georgia this year. And obviously you have to maintain it, but I think they can. Oklahoma, they had a good year last year, obviously revived under Brent Venables, but you got a freshman quarterback coming in with Arnold, and they don't really feel threatening. And obviously Oklahoma's schedule is just an absolute nightmare. Obviously there was jokes like, oh, Texas paid officials in the SEC to give them a harder schedule, which I thought that was a hilarious joke, but obviously not. But Oklahoma, I think, is going to have a rough year next year, and it's really going to suck for them because I think Texas is obviously, I think Texas is going to go to the college football playoff. I think they can win the SEC, and I think they're just going to slot in at the big boy table with Georgia and possibly take Alabama's spot. Not like, I know people are going to take that out of context, like, oh, they're not better Alabama all the time, all that crap. I just mean in terms of the current era that we're in. So Texas primed for a big, big start in the SEC. Longhorns fans, you have a lot to be happy about. It must be nice.